You coming on the podcast for the third time now?
Thank you for having me again.
Man, for everybody watching, we tried to do this, what was like a month ago, maybe? And
Yes,
then I think the sound wasn't recording. We tried to do it another day. There was people doing construction. So we said, listen, we still going to do this, but we got to find the right time. So hopefully right now is that time.
I believe right now is the right time for this conversation.
So it's crazy too because we had like a long conversation. It wasn't like it was like 5 minutes. And then I realized like, yo, for some reason it's not recording me. But what I think would be a great place to start off is like you can kind of do like a short recap, and then I think we'll pick off like when you started your business. But you had said you were going to school, and then after school you ended up in another country, and then once you're in that country, that's when your entrepreneurial journey started. So maybe just give us like the brief part of that because I think that's an important background part too.
So, everything happens for a reason. There definitely must have been a reason why the last episode did not record that we did a month ago, because I definitely have updates about our conversation. So I think it'll take it in
Let's
a
go.
different direction than our
Okay.
original conversation went into. I'll preface it there. But almost 10 years ago to this date, we are probably a week or two to the countdown of when I started
Oh,
my business. So that's significant within
let's
itself. We're
go.
celebrating 10 years, probably in the next 10 to 15 days. 10 years ago, I was living in the Republic of Kazakhstan, but he said, let's go prior to getting there.
Yeah.
Um, I did what people tell you to do. I was a smart kid. I grew up in Irvington, New Jersey. My parents, my father's an immigrant from Ghana, West Africa. My mother's
I
from
don't think
North.
we talked about that last time. I don't think I knew
No,
that.
we
Okay.
did not. Yes, my
Okay.
father's an immigrant. My mother's from North Carolina, and they told me to go to school and get a good job. They knew I was a good student. Be smart, get good grades, go get a job. That's what I heard. Like, you got to be good at school so that you can go to college, and when you go to college, you're going to get a good job. That was the
Yeah.
rhetoric I was told in my house, and I believed it. So when it was time to go to school, I went to Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland. Had a phenomenal time at the Morgan State, and then I decided I already knew I was going to get a master's degree. So I moved to Philadelphia to get a master's in education. But what had happened was there was a recession. You've heard this word before. There was a recession when I was coming of age and going to school. So when I wanted to become a teacher, there was a hiring freeze in the city of Philadelphia. And I was getting a degree in social studies, which is essentially non essential, right? If you're not math and science and even English, they're not checking for you. So I knew that there probably was not going to be a job in the city that I was getting my master's degree in. And I was cool with that because I was going to go back to New Jersey. I always have a backup plan. But this crazy opportunity came my way to move 5,400 miles away to the Republic of Kazakhstan.
Yeah.
And it was a random conversation. So two people saw each other in the hallway and they were catching up. They're like, "Hey man, how are you doing? I haven't seen you in a long time. What are you doing?" And one person was like, "Oh man, I run this education program for the University of Pennsylvania." And the other person was like, "Wow, I'm working with schools in Kazakhstan." And they were like, "Well, there's a hiring freeze in Philly, but we need teachers in Kazakhstan. Let's connect and collaborate." It literally happened from a random conversation in a hallway of people catching up.
Were you already talking with them, or were you walking by, heard them join the conversation? What was that like?
No. Oh, lights are going off. Oh, this is about to be okay. It came back on. It's about to be a good conversation.
Let's
No,
go.
so that was the background of our like program director of how this thing came about. So like a week later, they had a interest meeting. The Department of Education from Kazakhstan was flying to America. They were visiting schools and universities in America, and they wanted to recruit teachers. I thought it was the craziest thing ever. I said, what is Kazakhstan? And why do they
Right.
want me? They can't possibly want me. This must be for people who don't look like me. I was very clear that this is not for me. So I actually was talking to my professor that day. I was in the room. They were preparing for the meeting. They were passing out Kazakh chocolates. And I was like, oh, I'm leaving. So I left. Even though I was in the room, I left. I said, this is not for me. The next day, I went to school in the context of the school. So when I went to the University of Pennsylvania, you have to do this student teach. I was in a 1 year accelerated master's program. Part of the program is you go to school in the evening and you teach during the day. And the school, I requested the school up the street. The school up the street was West Philadelphia High School. You know, this West Philadelphia born and raised Fresh Prince. I was like, send me to the kids in the hood up the street. That's where I'm going to teach. They took my application and totally ignored everything that I said. And they sent me 90 minutes nowhere near the street, 2 trolleys, a bus, a train, plane to get to school. It's like a 90-minute commute every morning to
hell no.
Northeast Philadelphia or Northwest Philadelphia, the Russian side of Philadelphia, where there was this school that had like over 4,000 students, one of the most diverse schools in the country. They speak 52 different languages, and I had to
Man.
this massive commute. So I'm leaving at 6 o'clock in the morning to get to school. That's not where I told them. I wanted to go to the school that was 10 minutes away. But of course, God has other plans for us. So I'm at this international school. This my classroom, I have over 100 students. They speak different languages from around the world. It was one of the most diverse, like I said, schools in the country, in the United States. So when I went back to that school, we have this long commute. So I'm talking to some of the teachers that went to the meeting about Kazakhstan. And I'm like, are you going to Kazakhstan? I'm laughing at them because I think this is a joke. And they're like, it was a really good presentation. I think I'm going. I said, oh, and this was a white guy. So it's very important. I was like, oh, he's crazy. Larry is insane. I'm not listening to Larry.
Yeah.
I'm going to go
Yeah.
ask Michael. Michael is also white too. But I was like, I'm going to ask Michael. Because Michael is a little bit more saner. Hey, Michael, I heard you went to the meeting. And he was like, yeah, it was great. He was like, Lauren and I are thinking about going. And I said, wait a minute. So this is like 3 people that I'm talking to. And we all happen to be sent to the same school. So that's another piece of this. We were
True,
all
true.
sent to this diverse school, like 3 or 4 of us, and then we ended up in Kazakhstan months later together. So it was the wildest thing. Like, God doesn't make any mistakes. So Mike's like, he's gonna go. Lauren said she's gonna go. At the time, my brother was living in the Middle East. He was in the military, then he became a contractor. So he had spent a decade overseas. So being overseas is not like an anomaly in my family. We have multiple family members in the military or who've lived internationally. So
Yeah,
I
your
was
dad's from outside the
my,
US
my
too,
father's
so
from Ghana. Half my family lives, were born in another country. So it's not like out of this world. But Kazakhstan was not the place on my list. So I contacted my brother. He did, background checks to make sure that it was safe for me to go. He was like, you could go. And I had other people, you can go. And then I was like, what's stopping me? Like, why do I feel like people who look like me shouldn't be there? What's stopping me from taking this opportunity? So again, like I said, I didn't apply. So what had happened was, I told Michael, Lauren, and all the people that were interested in going, I said, listen, I'm interested. My friends and family convinced me. My mother supported it. I said, I'm interested, but I missed the meeting. Because remember, I walked out. I said, I'm not being a part of this meeting. So there was a secret meeting, the secret meeting to the secret meeting. They said, okay, they're coming back, Sade, and we're going to meet at this hotel at this time. You just going to show up. They was like, just show up to the meeting and we're going to slide your resume in the pile and you just going to show up. And that's what we did. And like 4 or 5 months later, I was living in Kazakhstan. They literally was like, we're just going to show up. What they going to do?
what let me ask you a question though, because I think like for the people that that aren't maybe where we're at, right, to where they've like chased their dreams, maybe achieved it. I think the thing that holds a lot of people back is like the fear and the doubt, right? So you know that you want to do it, you feel like this isn't for me. You tell your friends about it, and they come up with a solution. Hey, we're just gonna put the resume in there.
You just going
Even
to
then,
slide in there.
a lot of people would still be like, "Nah, that's too risky, bruh. I'm not doing that. What if they yell at me?" What made you say, "All right, let's do this"? Did they just force you to it? Did you say, "Okay, let's do it"? Like, what made you
I was
even
just
like? How did
like,
that
I don't even know what I was like, let's just put it in there. And the funny part about this is I'm the only Black person on the list. So it's not even like you could slide me in there. They could
so true though? We
clearly
definitely
see
we did not see you at none of these meetings. We know for sure. We know we
you
didn't see.
wasn't at the meeting. We never saw you before. So it was very apparent that I was new. So everyone else was white. We had one girl who was of Korean descent. But other than that, it was just me, my chocolate self. I showed up to the meeting in the hotel and they asked us a couple of questions. They asked me a couple of questions because I was new. And they said, well, you will be our team. We didn't hear from them for about a month or two. We thought it was like over. Then they sent us a visa, the visa information and a letter, an acceptance letter that a job offer. and we were in Kazakhstan. That was like, let's say that was February. I was in Kazakhstan like the second week of August that same year, 2011. So just that sometimes you just got to go for it. What is for
So
you is for you.
I remember last time you were talking, and this is what we'll get into. You're like, okay, you're out there, and you were there for a certain amount of time, and then that's when you realize, like, I want to do my own thing. Like, what was the, how did you
Yeah.
take us like to where you got to like that point?
So I got there. So that was the first hurdle, taking that leap of faith to move to Kazakhstan. It was a great experience. I was only supposed to be there for 1 year. I knew that if I stayed for a second year, that year two would have to be year three because I was on a 3-year teaching sabbatical. I'm a Bill and Melinda Gates scholar, and they say you could take off through
You're
up
a
to
what?
3 years. I'm a Bill and Melinda Gates scholar. I
Okay,
received
okay.
up to a decade's worth of academic funding. So that was also a part of it. I could take 3 years off from school. So if I stayed for 2, I had to stay for 3 because I needed to maximize my sabbatical. So,
Okay.
or if I did not, I would lose my academic funding, and I knew that I would want a PhD. So I needed to follow their rules. So if I stayed for 1 year and I didn't want to go back to America to look for a job, I was like, I already got a job. Let me just stay here for one more year and then I will leave to work on to get my PhD. So I knew 3 years was going to be my time. But when year 3 came, I was trying to figure out life. I was applying to graduate schools, getting denied. I was like, oh my goodness, this was my plan. It's not working. I was no longer fulfilled living in Kazakhstan. Um, I relocated. I was living closer to the capital. I was in the capital. Then we relocated closer to China, and we were in like a remote village. So it was a different experience, but we got paid more too. Let's be clear. I moved, and they gave me a pay raise, but it was time to leave. I was tired. I was like, okay, I'm tired of being the black girl. I'm tired of these people pointing, looking at me, and touching me, and I miss my family.
Touching my
Oh my goodness, touching my hair, touching my skin, taking photos of me. I mean, I was on TV, all kinds of things. It just in the beginning you're like, okay, you're a novelty, you get it. And then after 3 years, you're like, don't touch me, don't play with me. And I'm saying this stuff in Russian, like leave me alone. So it was just like my normal life, but I knew that there was more. And I wanted to be in a relationship. I had a long distance relationship, who knows why. Um, and I was missing my family, and I was like, okay, I cannot live here anymore. This is messing with my dating life. Um, I want to see my family. So I knew it was time to relocate, but I didn't know what I was going to do next. So I just started knowing I needed to save some money. So I saved $10,000. That wasn't enough, but I saved some. And I knew it was time. So a month before I resigned completely, I took a leap of faith and I started my business online. So that's where this journey started 10 years ago.
wait,
I
wait,
was
wait, 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 wait. How did you get the idea to start an online business? I feel like let's go a little bit slower. So like people are applying, they don't get in. I feel like most people is like, I want to like I'm still want to go into school or I'm going to go work somewhere else. I feel like a lot of people might not be like, hey,
oh yeah,
well,
let's talk about that. I forgot that part. So the first I think I applied to like 10 schools, maybe the first 5, but I applied to some ambitious schools. Like I applied to like Harvard, I applied to NYU, not Yale, Penn, Columbia, and the first set of um letters were rejection letters. So I was hurt. I was like my ego was feeling some type of way. But a lot of people get denied from Harvard, okay? So I was like they don't want me, so I ain't going. I forget it. I'm not going back to America because I can't face life. So
really? Okay, okay.
I was gonna take a job in Kenya. I was just like, I guess this is my life. I'm just gonna live overseas. I'm not gonna face reality. Um, and then I was like, okay, you can't run away forever. So I was about to run, and then I was like, God said, God will block you from running. You can't run forever. So I had to face reality, and you know, talking about how I got to Kazakhstan. This is really how I got into graduate school. I was looking at the university. Somebody in Kazakhstan suggested that I go to University of Wisconsin, and my application was pending. My application had been pending for months, and I just got afraid to say like, why is my application pending? I called them probably around May 30th, so probably maybe 2 months, 2 weeks before this time, and I was like, my application says pending. You guys haven't made a determination of whether or not I'm accepted or not. And they were like, you're missing a recommendation. One of my professors never sent in a recommendation. I had applied in November. It's like
So it's like
April.
you were just gonna like, how would I know to add that in? You were just gonna let that be missing, or what
Like,
goes on
y'all
here?
wasn't gonna say nothing. Like, and it's up to you. You're a PhD student, they expect you to be on top of your stuff.
That's
But
true.
literally, I
That's
was
true.
missing one recommendation. I called somebody I knew and I was like, listen, I need you to do me a solid. They said, if you can give me a recommendation in 24 hours, they will slide my application in and they will review it at their last meeting. And I called that lady. That was my mentor. She was like, I don't want you to go to Wisconsin. I didn't want you to go to Kazakhstan, but I'm gonna do it. She did my recommendation within 24 hours, and then 2 weeks later I had an acceptance letter from the University of Wisconsin. So
Okay.
there's been some close calls where literally God just slide my stuff in there, and I just happen to get listen in his favor. We're talking about, being undeterred, we're
Amen.
talking about faith. There's multiple examples of favor in my life where I have not had to apply, or I literally was like, do me a solid, slide it on in there, and things have happened. So in this journey, as we talk about entrepreneurship, I have to be reminded that I got favor, and I have to be reminded to still be faithful when it still looks sketchy, because there's multiple times where his looked like, how am I going to get out of this? And God has come
Exactly.
through. And the leap of faith for business, I just knew I was supposed to do something else. I knew it. I could feel it. People were asking me like, how did you go overseas? People were contacting me like, how was your experience in Kazakhstan? And they were inspired to travel the world, and they were inspired to get international jobs. And I was like, I just want to help and inspire people. And I also wanted to do something that allowed me to have flexibility. So I wanted to still be able to travel, but also be spend time with my family. So how can I do both? And entrepreneurship seemed like a way to do that. So, but I spent the rest of that time trying to figure out how to make money, because you can inspire people, but you got to get paid too. So that was the
Right.
next hurdle. How the heck do I get
Did
paid
you
for this?
you have like, when you were first starting your business, did you have like a specific dream, like, man, if I could do this as like entrepreneur, this is like really what I want to do, replace my income or be able to make this much or just have this type of business? What did that look like for you?
The first step was I just wanted to inspire people. Then I realized I quit my job, so no more money was coming in from there. I was like, wait, you got to make money. So then the next step was, can I replace what I used to make as a teacher, as an international teacher? So that was my
Okay.
first benchmark. Can I replace what I made as an international teacher? My next benchmark was, can I make $10,000 a month? Like, can we get to this 5-figure month?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And I remember having my first 5-figure month, and I was like at a grad school meetup or something. We were having like a meeting for the Black graduate students in Wisconsin. And I started crying because I was like, how did I make $10,000? It was more than 10K that month, but I was like, how did I do this? Like, I don't understand. Like, people are paying me. What's going on? So I was having a breakdown because I couldn't believe it. I was like, what is this? Now I'll be like, listen, we better make 10K, because if we don't, how are we gonna pay for these bills? But at that time, I was really like, I had to get coaching to be like, it's okay to make money from your hands. It doesn't have to come from a paycheck. It can, like, you have a gift and you need to be compensated for your gift. And that was half my battle in the first part of my business, believing in myself. I would have made millions by now if I just believed in myself. My identity in the beginning was so wrapped around me being a teacher and a doctoral student, that I was in my head, I thought, oh, you go to school and you are subject matter expert on what you went to school for. So in my head, if you don't got an MBA, like, how you in business? Like, I don't, like, you're teaching people about business. You don't have a business degree. But
Yeah.
what I realized was you could just hire people who have business degrees, and people are hiring you and they're investing with you because of who you are. And it took me so long to accept who I was and whose I was, and truly understand that I got favor. So sometimes there's going to be rooms that you're going to be in that, listen, your favor got you in. Your resume didn't get you in. Your credentials didn't get you in. Your favor got you in that door. And I got to accept it and move accordingly. So it just took so long. And I, anyone out there, especially when you're new and you're excited, but you feel intimidated by the people who've been doing this for a long time because they're like, don't do it this way. Nah, these new people, they don't know what they talk about, blah, blah, blah. They complaining. You got to be so grounded in who you are and your mission and vision that you really are undeterred. Like you're focused and you're resilient so you can accomplish your goal. And then you need to attach that to business goals and strategies and marketing tactics and things like that. But you got to be grounded in who you are because it's not easy. Okay. Let's talk about it. It's not easy. 10 years later, it is not easy. And I feel like we're supposed to have this conversation now because leading up, I have a conference coming up next week in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we're leading up to 10 years in business. And you get to a point where we're back in a recession. Like, life is cyclical. It happens. My professor say history does not repeat itself, but in some cases it does. And there's some lessons that I didn't learn 10 years ago that are reoccurring now. And leading up to this conference, the last 30 days, I'm like, what is going on? The amount of attacks. That's why I think this conversation was timely. And I just had to kind of chronicle what was happening in my life because it was just like pure destruction to the point that I was like, I'm out. I can't do this anymore. We're closing up shop. We might not make it to year 10 because it was just so much happening. And I was like, okay, this is happening, but I'm a different person. And how I respond to this is going to be important because I knew what was happening. I'm like, this is a story brewing that needs to be told to other people. It's not fully there. You're getting the scoop, but I'm supporting people at their events. I went to an event in Nashville, Tennessee. I got there. There was a hurricane in Nashville, Tennessee. I haven't been to Nashville in about 5 years. I get there. There's a hurricane. Luckily, we just get water and the hurricane doesn't go where in the area that I'm in. But the next day, I get food poisoning. And I'm at this event. I'm throwing up in the back of the event. I'm sick. I can barely move, but the show must go on. So I'm supporting the event. I'm smiling at the people, and I am like in pain. And they're like, do you need some? I'm like, I just got to sit here. I cannot even go to the bathroom and walk. So I'm like, okay. So I'm recovering. I'm still showing up, still doing what I need to do, not telling people I'm sick, recovering. I get home. It's Mother's Day weekend. I'm playing with my nieces and nephews. These kids got snotty noses, so they make me sick. And then the next week, I'm in Houston, Texas, where I'm supporting another event. And I'm a little I'm stuffed up. I feel a cold coming on, but I'm still moving. Then we get to Houston. There's an active tornado. We can see it in the windows at the hotel. And
That's
I'm
crazy.
like, I was like, this is the second tornado in 7 days that I've been in. But this time we can see it outside spinning. So now we're in an active tornado. We have to shelter in place in the ballroom. We have to get away from all of the windows. And we're in the room, and I'm there with people of faith. And literally, we started praying. There's somebody praying, saying, this is not going to harm us. This is not going to hurt us. We're going to be fine. And I knew we were going to be fine because I knew we was with, shout out to Bishop Connie Stewart. She was not playing. She put on that bishop hat, and we were in that ballroom, 100 of us praying. It was like the opening, like the networking mixer, the opening ceremony of the conference. So I'm on the team. Part of our job is we have to keep the attendees calm. We got to be calm and collected. We got to keep the attendees calm. We got to make sure people are not stuck in the elevators. The hotel people are, they're stressed out. They're panicking. Some of them are crying. We're in an active, like this is, it was just like dark outside. Like it was, we were in shock. I was in shock, and the lights are flickering on and off. And I'm just like, again? I said, oh, some good stuff must be happening. Like, and we're nervous. People are flying in. Flights are being canceled. We don't even know if the speakers are going to be able to make it. We might have to make a second agenda. They were like, Sade, if you're ready to speak, I said, I'm always ready. I'm supposed to be doing other stuff. I wasn't a speaker at this event. But hey, if I got to do
Yeah,
it, do what we got to do. And I was just like, we got to stay like literal storms. We talk about figurative storms in our lives. It was literal, like, whew. And I was like, the storm passed. I was like, thank God. Then I'm sick. I'm cough, I'm like coughing and my nose is stuffed, but I'm swigging cough medicine every day at the event, still trying to handle
Mhm.
the aftermath of a tornado. And then I get home, and this is the day for me to start like 2 weeks out of my conference to promote my conference. I lose my voice. So I'm like, I was like, okay, I've been sick, stomach problems, cold, coughing. I'm still a little nasally now. And now I don't got a voice. And I'm supposed to be live streaming. I'm supposed to be doing interviews. I'm supposed to be promoting this conference. And that day, probably like last week, I had a meeting with a sponsor. I've been trying to get this meeting for months. And I'm like, I cannot cancel this meeting. And I don't got no voice. And somebody's like, who needs me to pray for you right now? And I was like, listen, I got a meeting in an hour. I need to speak to this sponsor.
It's like,
And I don't got a voice. And I need y'all to pray for my voice. And literally, my voice worked for that hour. After that, it was a done deal. I was just
man,
like, so, and that day, I woke up and I was just so hurt just thinking about it. I'm like, I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to be steadfast. I'm trying to be faithful. And things keep hitting me left and right, you know, invoices. And I'm just like, what is going on? And I'm just trying, like, I'm like, Lord, I can't handle this. You said you're not supposed to give me more than I can bear, but I can't bear this. I'm tired. My body is physically breaking down. I don't got no voice. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna promote, I'm gonna do this. I was like, y'all gonna have to use AI and clone my voice because I can't talk. And I'm like, I gotta have a voice because I got a conference and these people are coming in. And I'm just like breaking down. And I'm just like, Lord, there must be a lesson that I need to learn to go into the next part of my life because this is too much. So I really like was going through it. And I just had to like, I talked to my therapist. I had to pray about it. I had people praying for me. People were coming to me. And I know when I tell you God is so good, he will send people and things to you. Somebody was like, I just want to sponsor part of your conference. I can't make it, but I'm going to just sponsor. Here, God told me to send this to you. People call, even yesterday, somebody was like, I want to do something. We have a meeting after this. I just want to do it. Then 2 days ago, somebody's like, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that. And then someone else was like, oh, you want me to bring my people? They coming. Oh, you need this? People have been just reminders of God saying, I haven't forgotten you.
yeah, yeah,
So for the people who are going through the storm, because I usually don't talk about a storm when I'm in it. I was like, y'all gonna give me another 10 days, I'll be good to go. But
yeah,
the reminders will come to you. And sometimes when things get tight, like, I've hosted events before and we've never been this over budget. I was like, who's going to pay for this? Like literally, I'm like, I got these cards. I'm like, we're gonna keep swiping to see what happens. Who's gonna pay for this? I don't know. And like I was just like, how did I get here? Because then you get to the point, things that you ask God for. Yeah, we have 5-figure months. We've done this. We've have clients that have paid us over $100,000 to work with. We've done all these things, right? And I'm like, how did I get to this point? You get to another point where you're like, how did I get here? And I had to make sure that I was working on how do I respond to when I get here? Because if I'm having these kind of problems, how am I going to respond to $1 million problems or $100,000 problems? I was like, this is just grooming me, preparing me for the next level. Because it ain't no way all these storms, literal, figurative things that are attacking me mentally, physically, environmentally, are happening for no reason. It was a sign. And another thing, when it gets tight, because I know you talk to people like sometimes you have those tight moments. If there's a financially tight moment, the first thing I ask myself is, have I been tithing? Because if it got tight, it means I didn't do something, right?
mm,
And I immediately, like, there's a church, I just cash app it. I literally cashed app that night. I don't even do it on a Sunday. Whenever I feel that way, I'm like, all right, let me send an offering. Let me send a top. Let me just do it because I need to do it. The next morning, someone calls me. She texts me and says, "Oh, God told me to send this to you." And I was just like, "What?" And I was like, I didn't, I said yes. I don't, she said, she was like, "I'm just being obedient. God said, send this to you, and I'm going to do it." I didn't ask her how much it was. I said, here's my Cash App. Now, here's my PayPal. And she just sent it. She just sent it. And someone else was like, "Oh, you need this? Okay, I'm going to just do it." And
Yeah.
strangers are just coming saying, doing things. So even
Yeah.
in the midst of the storm, you will receive reminders that God still got you. And it still ain't easy because I'm still like, this was traumatic. I'm like, I need a break. So I'm gonna take my
Man.
time off after this. But I'm still reminded, like, God still got you. So don't, whatever you're going through, still operate in gratitude.
Facts.
Still
Facts.
grateful. I'm still, even though like, listen, you can see it in my eyes. Like, I was just like, what is going on? The people behind the scenes, I'll be like, what's going on? Like, this is crazy. But I'm still grateful. I'm still like just in awe how God is using other people to remind me, I ain't forget about you. This is just the beginning. There's more coming. Um, and you just got to keep going. And then when you can't go, let me be clear about this too. You need a break. Like, my body literally told me you have to slow down.
Yeah.
And if you don't slow down, ma'am, I am going to slow you down. So
Yeah.
I spent, like, prior to this week, the last couple of weeks in between these events, in the bed, trying to rest and sleep because my body said, no, ma'am, you need to slow your roll. So even, and I was like, I mean, I was in team meetings. I couldn't even talk. I couldn't tell nobody what to do. I was like, you know what? I'm going back to sleep. I will deal with this later. I can't do it. My body said
True.
no. So keep going, but also know when you need to rest. There's harvest season and there's hibernation season. You got to know what season you're in. Whew, it was a lot, but I think that's what we're supposed to talk about today.
Man, the thing I will add to that, the way that my mind works is we're going through these storms, literally and figuratively, right? It's like an actual tornado, but then all these things. And Christians, we always say this has to be happening for a reason. And so we're waiting for God to show us in our life what that reason is. But the way my mind works is sometimes the reason isn't for you. So
Ooh,
maybe you went through all these storms
ooh,
not for your life, but so you could come on here and someone else could hear
ooh,
that you went through and
mm,
it changed their life. And so that's
ooh,
why I always think I'm like,
mm,
we have to think at a bigger level to where it's like that person that's just about to give up would have given up if you would have had given up when those tornadoes were happening. But because you didn't, you prayed through it, you came, now you're able to share on the podcast and now it can help them. And I think a
ooh.
lot of times we miss that. We're like, yo, I'm waiting for the sign. I'm like, it's not always about us. It's like the Bible. Some of those stories happen. So 2,000 years later, you could read it and it could change your
Mm,
life.
mm.
So I appreciate you coming on here and sharing that because we don't know who's listening to that could need that more than we need that, you know?
Listen, I hope it helps somebody because whew, it was rough. And there's some things that have happened. And I'm like, this will never happen again. Like, we will never be in this situation again. And part of it happened too for me. One of my biggest challenges, and this is also another piece for if you're going through a hard time and hardship in any way or form, is I don't like to ask for help. I will be depleted, tired, broke, sad, and not say anything. Because I have a high tolerance for pain and a high, like going to school, living overseas, you just have a high tolerance for certain things.
Yeah.
And part of what I had to do in this season is ask for help. I had this thing called 100 Ask. You know how they had a Dream 100? I had to ask 100, like just keep asking for things and asking for people, even though I didn't want to. Because that ego will be like, I can do this myself. I got an email list. I know I can do Facebook ads. I can be a marketer, but marketing is not working the way it used to work. So I had to be on the ground. I had to talk to people. I had to ask for help. I had to say, hey, can you share this out? Can you do this? And I had to ask strangers. And again, God, this man called me because he wanted to interview me for his network. And he was talking real fast. He was like, somebody gave me your number. And normally I don't pick up the phone. Like right now, my phone is dead. So my phone rang before this conversation. I didn't pick it up. This man called me and I was like, he's like, my name is da-da-da-da. Somebody gave me your number and I need you to do this thing. And I was like, and I was listening to him. I said, wait, who are you? And what's going on? And this man has be over the last 30 days has become my mentor. I found out someone in California gave him my number. He lives in North Carolina. He probably lives about 45 minutes away from me. He randomly called me, did not know me, to ask me to interview me. And I found out that he's been hosting large scale events in North Carolina for years, but he hasn't done one since COVID. And I was just like, he was like, you need to do this, you need to do this. He sent me emails upon emails of things that I need to do to market traditional marketing tactics that he's used to fill up events with thousands of people. This man just called me out of the blue and has been mentoring me. He says he's not a mentor, but he's been mentoring me since. And the thing is, so this is another piece of this too for people of faith and Christians. This man does not identify as a man of faith or probably a Christian. Because I was like, this is God. He was like, no, it's not. You got here because of who you are. I said, well, that's what you want to say. But I
Right.
know who God is, and I know what God does for me. You call me out of, and you live up the street, and you're connecting me. I got a whole list of people he's connected me with in the last 30 days. That's God. You call it what you want to call it, but I'm going to call it what I desire to call it, which is God showing up for me over and over again. So he can use people that might not be believers to bless you. Don't miss that part. Because everybody's not going to believe, everybody's not going to look like you that's going to bless you. Everybody's not going to believe what you believe. They're not going to have the same political affiliations or whatever the case is. So don't block your blessings because they don't look like the bow or the gift that you think it's supposed to look like, the wrapping paper that it's supposed to look like. I was like, okay, you say that, but I know what I've been asking for. And this man connected me. He just connected me with so many different people for free. Like he could have charged me hours upon hours of mentoring and coaching out of the blue because I just was like, hey, I need some help. And he was like, I'm going to do it for
Right.
you, help you. Like, there's people I know that, not everybody, there's people I know that are millionaires. They'd be like, I send a message, they like, I can't do it, I'm busy. This man doesn't know me from a can of paint and has done so much in a short amount of time. If we had more time, we would be able to do so much more. But what I also understand about this season, even though it is difficult, it was difficult, God has prepared me for something bigger. Because these connections, these things that I'm asking for, some of these people and networks, I never would have asked for if I wasn't in the space that I was in, where I needed the help, where I was like, my back is against the wall, and if I don't get help and ask for it, I'm gonna be in super trouble. So I
Right.
would these opportunity, like I never would have asked him. I never would have been connected with some of the people he's connected with. I never would have connected like some of this stuff that I've been asking people for and like following up. Somebody's like, oh, I'm gonna connect you with this person. I'm following up with them. Like, you said you're gonna do it. Send me the information. Old me would never do that. Undeterred me is like, okay, I don't care until you tell me no. I'm gonna still follow up. You said you want to sponsor, I'm gonna send you a link. You said you want to do this, okay, we gonna do it. You said you want to do that, boom. I'm just like unattached because I know what God said, and I'm gonna just keep going. So listen, God will use who He wants to use, and He will give you what you're supposed to have.
Yeah, I'm glad you shared that because that's something I teach our like members in Undeterred now because that's something I learned kind of the hard way. And I think it's because when you see everyone else on social media or in person, it comes across as like they did everything on their own. But even when you talk to the richest people alive, I started realizing I'm like, when I listen to their podcast, they're like, yo, I had this idea to start Instagram, Uber, whatever. it cost millions of dollars to do that. So I had to ask someone else to front me the money. I had to ask an investor. I had to ask this friend. And I'm like, yo, the most successful people in the world are asking the banks for money, investors for money, people that they don't know and they have no shame. So
No shame.
why do we have shame to ask the people that we have a close relationship with for help? And I'm like, why do we feel like that? We feel less than if it's like, yo, we've been friends for forever, or mom, dad, or brother, sister, whoever, to ask for help. It's like that ego and feeling bad. But I'm like, yo, everyone is doing that. I think the only time that is bad is if you're taking advantage of people. But when you're trying to do something that God's calling you to do, and you just need some help, like you said, like that's why God has put these other people in our lives to help us get there.
No, I'm in a season of like no shame. I don't care. I'm like, I'm just before in the beginning, you feel like, oh, you have to keep this persona. I'm like, I'm shameless. I don't got no shame about it because you're absolutely right. They ask all the time. They don't, and they have unapologetically, and they be asking for, we want $10 million. We want this. We want that. And then they have the audacity to ask, and sometimes they get it. And the stories that you hear 9 out of 10 times are the ones who got it. Like they
I
just
learned that
audacity
I
to ask.
started I started asking myself, like, you have this, like, I feel like everyone has this like feeling inside of them to ask somebody. I feel like God's telling us this is the person that I told you to ask. But then we feel weird about it. And I started thinking to myself, like, why do I feel weird? Like, what is the worst thing that could happen? And so now, like, I literally just asked. Like, right now I'm in Albania. This is the craziest story. So because we like made this business transition and we're traveling and all this stuff, like our funds are like not in the best shape right now. So me and my wife Lauren were at a coffee shop, and this guy like kept looking at me. Like he was sitting somewhere and he just kept looking. After like, I don't know, 30 minutes or an hour, he came over and he was like, I just wanted to talk to you and say hi. I'm doing this like challenge where I'm like a really shy person and I want to like talk to more people. So it was really cool. So we connected, we were talking. He's a believer as well. And then I forget what day that was on, but like a couple days later, we were supposed to find a new apartment or a new place to stay because the place that we were in, like, it was booked. So we were gonna literally get someone was gonna drive us to a new city, and when we got there, we were hoping that God would provide us with a place. So we were like, if we get there and we don't find a place, this is risky. Literally like an hour, maybe an hour and a half before we are supposed to leave, like this guy messaged me and he said, hey, like, do you need a place to stay? Because I have someone, bro, like the most random text. And I was like, yo, that's crazy. So I was like, I messaged him, but here's the thing, like we didn't have the funds right then. So I had to like have the audacity to be like, hey, I know that you have a really nice place, but we don't have the funds like right now. And they were like, don't even worry about it. Like just come. Like come to the office, move in, like it's fine. So then, like the next day, I gave her some of the money, and then the couple days ago, or yesterday, or a couple days ago, like she started following me on Instagram, and she started liking my posts and like sharing them, like the lady that I'm renting from. And then today, I was having one of those days, kind of in the morning, where you're like, man, I'm doing all that I can, but it's like doesn't feel like stuff is catching up. And even if I make a lot of money right now, it's just going to go to paying stuff. So I really didn't
Mm-hmm,
make a lot of money.
mm-hmm.
She messaged me on Instagram and said, hey, like first she said you can extend your stay for 2 weeks. And then she said, hey, if you want to pay when you move out, if that's more comfortable, like don't even worry about it. And I was like, yo, that is crazy. Like, you know what I mean? I think it's like God provides, but also I think initially like you have to be humble enough to ask for help. And I think a lot of times as Christians we feel bad, but I'm like, yo, Jesus, who, if you're doing something for Jesus, let's just say that's like some of the most, if not the most important work in the world you can do, right? If Jesus is telling you to do something, it's really important. He sent the disciples out with nothing. Bro was like, don't take an extra pair of clothes, don't take no food, and just rely on people. So I'm like, that's how we are right now. We're doing God's work, but then when we don't have anything, we feel less than. But I'm like, he right now you feel like God's telling you. He was literally telling them like in the flesh, and he sent them with nothing. And so it's like, how do you know that you're not in the position that you're supposed to be in? Sometimes God doesn't provide us with stuff because if we would have had that, if we would have had the money, D Green would have been over here eating shrimp and lobster on the beach. But because he only had enough money for a macchiato. He was in this coffee shop and he was able to meet this
Mhm.
guy. And you never know if that person is supposed to change your life. So I think when we're doing reckless things and we're just destroying our money, like you said before, we need to think about like why are we in this situation. But I was like, God providing looks different than what we think.
Mm.
We think God providing is I'm gonna eat a different meal. I'm gonna eat 3 meals a day, and each of those meals is gonna be different. I'm gonna have a place to stay that has not only running water but hot water. I'm gonna have like a change of clothes every single day, like all these things. And a lot of the times, I feel like God providing is like you're alive. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to
Mm.
even eat every day. You don't even have to shower every day. Those are wants. And I think when we look at the disciples, it's like he literally was like, just go have obedience. And I think that taught them the faith. So I think a lot of the times it's not really about what we have and what we don't. It's like God is teaching us to either have faith or to rely on other people, or sometimes we're supposed to have that relationship. Who knows what you and this guy will do? You know, like a year from now, you'd be like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
so glad we connected. But if everything was going well, you would have just said, nah,
Yep.
bro, I don't need your help. Like, I know what I'm doing.
I never would even ask. That's the thing. I wouldn't even know that he would have provided this level of support. And you're so right. Like I've had that experience. When moving back to the U.S. I didn't visit Wisconsin before I moved there, and I didn't have nowhere to live. And I just randomly said, you know what? We're gonna figure it out. Somebody's going to provide me a place to live. And somebody asked me like, "Oh, you're moving to Wisconsin. Do you know this person is moving?" And she was like, "Oh, do you got a place to live?" And we became roommates. Like this
Man.
things have happened this way. And even you're in Albania.
Oh, this
It,
is my thing, though. Like,
it
it's like
happened.
if you're listening to this, it's like why do we doubt that this stuff happens? It happens every day. But it just drives me nuts like how many Christians I talk to and they go to church on Sunday, they talk about just having the faith of a mustard seed, but then it's like you don't believe that God's going to give you a roommate. You don't think that God can give you a free coffee. You don't think that God can get you into a school. Like we're not asking for anything that a human can't do. Your best friend can do it. And so we're like reading the Bible, like, oh my gosh, like these people went into a fiery furnace and he provided. God's amazing. But yet, when you need a place to stay, something that like anyone almost could help you do, it's like we start freaking out. And I'm just glad that we have this to share these stories, but it's like we need to have more faith in what we do. Like, it's sad. It's like we got to believe that God's going to provide in all these situations because it's nothing crazy that we're asking for.
So there's some things I know, like I knew there was no shadow of a doubt that I was gonna have a place to stay. Like I was like, it's gonna happen. It'll happen. And it happened. And then there's some, and part of it is we're human. That's our flaw. We're human.
True, true.
So even though I'm like, God's got this, and I'm working on my mind, I was like, God always work it out. He always work. It does not mean that we are void of feelings and emotions and temper tantrums. Because I'll be
True,
arguing
true.
like, God, this don't make no sense to me. I don't understand. Even though I know it's gonna work out, but it still can be scary and traumatic and stressful because we're human. And that's part of our human experience, that human will. Like we have this free will that allows us to make different decisions. It's definitely a challenge, but the reminders over and over and over again of what God can do is just powerful. And I was like, this is just preparing me for my next level. This is preparing me for whatever I decide to do. And I can still decide, like, listen, I don't want to do this no more. I'm tired. Like sometimes the signs are you need to shift and do something different. So I know going into this year 10, there is a pivot, there is a shift. There's some things that I need to do differently because of what I want to have happen next in my life. Um, I need to be different. So that's what this is too. This I needed to be different. And then another piece about it is sometimes our stories are not for us, but it's also to help the person who's helping us.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of times there's something that they need to do or that they need to accomplish or they need to have faith about. So pouring into you is actually helping them. And when you don't ask, and when you are acting, prideful or selfish and you don't want to say anything, you're blocking their blessings too, because they go both ways. You
Hmm.
know, there was something, the person who said, I'm a sponsor, and she's like, I got to do this. There's something she's trying to do. She's trying to go to her next spiritual level, financial level. And this was a part of her journey. whether, she had to, like, it's a part of her journey, and part of me receiving it is a part of her receiving her blessing as well. So we got to understand it really isn't about us, that we are all interconnected in some way, shape, or form, and somebody's going to be inspired and impacted. And then also I said, this is the stuff that was happening. I was like, this is the stories of champions. This is how
Yeah,
champions and pioneers and legends are built. Icons experience challenges, and it's about how they respond to those challenges. That's why we admire them so much. We admire their tenacity. This is why we talk about them. We do case studies about how they overcame challenges. It's not that the challenges didn't arise, it's about how they responded to them. So if something like this happens again, I know how to, what is going to be my course of action. Like the food poisoning, that Nashville
true.
hot chicken got me. I was like, all right, we're going to have to put some Pepto Bismol in my travel kit, because that can't happen again. um you know Making sure, okay, boosting my immunity. Like, why am I can't be getting sick. I love traveling. Like, I gotta boost my immunity, and don't let them little kids with them snotty noses come over when I'm traveling. I gotta babysit them when I got free time. So we got new standard operating procedures, so I can protect my, health. So just some new lessons and some new things that I've learned. And also, I know I need to slow down so that I can build up my immunity again and focus on gut health and all that other stuff, so I can be top notch. So it was a reminder, like, okay, you need to go to the doctor, you need to just make sure you're good. So I will just say, if anybody's going through these things, like taking that leap of faith, understanding that the safety, the security, the things will be provided, but it's not going to be provided until you take the leap. You got and
True.
go after the things you've said. I want to use the example. You're in Albania, couple of, what is it, 7, 8 years ago. Somebody around this time, I like to remember stories, because I'm a part of my first degree is in history, and I did like this project on archiving history. So part of why I'm a proponent of social media and us sharing these stories, and even this broadcast, is because it is a part of our archival history. We don't understand the significance of this moment right now. But 10
Very
years
true.
from now, I'm going to be talking about this, and it's going to make sense. So you're in Albania. I just posted on social media that I want to speak internationally. And I want, it's going to be provided for me. There's certain things that I'm 100% clear. Like, there's certain abundance in my life that if I say it, it's going to happen. Like, there's no blocking it. Like, we will make millions. Like, certain things are just gonna, like, it's gonna happen. I don't know when, but it's gonna happen. So I was like, I want to speak internationally. I did a live stream about it, and I posted it on Facebook. I get a Facebook message from a friend. She was like, "Are you serious? Do you really want to speak internationally?" I was like, okay, whatever. She was like, "There's an opportunity. I'm gonna connect you with somebody, but it's like in 10 days." 10 days. I was talking to some lady in London. She was like, "We got this thing. We're doing this summit for women in Albania. It's like June 4th, whatever it is." Mind you, I had a conference the following week. I was like, she was like, "Are you going to come?" I had like a couple of hours to make a decision. I'm like, I'm going to Albania. I was like, luckily, because my passport is always, I got it preserved, is always ready. So 10 days later, I'm flying to Tirana, Albania, to speak at this women's global summit, because I posted on Facebook that I want to do this. And somebody like, if you true to this, if you serious, let's do it. And I'm just like, literally at the presidential palace with the prime minister. It was the wildest thing. So you really, sometimes people be like, don't say nothing about your dreams and your visions, keep it to
Thank
yourself.
you.
I'd be like, why?
No.
God provides through people. I tell people stuff be happening. I have asked for, like, I said, I want a free office. I was like, I'm not paying for no office. I was at an event. This lady walked up to me. I don't know. I told her who I was or something like that. We were waiting to talk to somebody else. And then I happened to just turn around and talk to her. And I told her what I did. She was like, "Do you want a free office?" Like, those were the words that came out of her mouth. "Do you want a free office?" And it was like 10 minutes away from where I was living at that moment. And I was just like, yes. And I had a free office for like almost a year before COVID shut everything down. Like, you just gotta have you really just gotta be relentless. You just gotta be focused. And you gotta pray, because it gets hard. Like, it is not easy right now. But I just decided like you can still have not an easy life or not an easy season, because this ain't my life is not gonna be easy, not gonna be like this forever. This is a season. You can have a season, but it's about how you want to respond to that season. And living overseas and being international, I think you talked about like electricity and water. There were times I didn't have water. There's those times we have electricity. Like I'll be teaching in the middle of a lesson and all the lights go out. So I had to learn how to just be grateful and have gratitude for just the simplest things that I have
I
water.
think if most people, most Americans, or people in a country that does well off, if you could experience what it's like to not have water for like 2 or 3 days, it'll change your life. Like every time I take a shower now, I don't care what temperature it is. Like I'm so thankful because there's been times where like I never thought in my life I would go without water. So this isn't just like, oh, you didn't take a shower. It's like, bro, I didn't brush my teeth. I didn't have water to cook. I couldn't take a shower. And the first time you take a shower after that feels amazing. You don't forget that. So then when you have hot water on top of that, I'm like, God, this is a good day. Either it's a good start of the day or it's a good end of the day. Either way, it changes you. So I think one thing that I've always, not always, but I think when I was in high school or college, I started thinking about like in the Bible, you have these different characters, different people that existed that are kind of known for different things. So you have like somebody known for wisdom, or you have Samson is known for like strength, right? And I was like, man, why do we feel like they stopped writing the Bible, but God's people didn't stop doing things? So they're still
Mm,
talking about you. It's just they're just not going to add it in the Bible. But that doesn't mean when you go to heaven that God's not going to talk about it, or people aren't going to know about you. So I'm like, I
mm,
want my story, if they were going to add it in there, to be like, this guy had the craziest faith out of everyone. So I was like, I'm not the strongest, I'm not the
mm,
wisest, I'm not the richest or any of that type of stuff.
mm,
But I don't want it to be like this dude, every time that he faced like a hard time or a challenge, like he just gave up on God. Like when you think about it, that's like basically Israel and like God's people's story. It's like he would do a sign for them, they'd be happy, they would forget what he did, they would start worshiping other gods, everything would go bad, he would forgive them, and it would restart. And I'm like, I don't want that to be my life. I don't want it to be like I keep doing amazing things, you forget, you're not faithful. I want it to be like, yo, this, when I die, I almost want like God and the angels to be like relieved. Like, yo, this dude was like causing us that, like, now we can
mm.
relax because he was always causing us to have to come through with the blessings. And I think a lot of the times we don't think, like you said, we're archiving our history. It's like, what's your story going to be like? Like, because you're
Mm,
writing it every day. Is it going to be that you
yep.
gave up, that you didn't believe? Like you just went to church on Sunday, talked about how great God was, but in your life, like, is the narrator saying they went to church and talked about how great God was, but they didn't believe it. On
Mm.
Monday, they were right back being faithless. Like I'm like, that can't be me. I have to love God, I have to have faith, and I have to treat his people well. I might fall short on some other
Mm.
stuff, but I'm like, I can't be those three things.
This is good. This is what we were supposed to talk about. This is for somebody. This is for somebody out
Yeah.
there. Um, be keep the faith and keep going. Like we can't change things in our lives if we don't keep going and keep going. And a lot of times they'll become that self-fulfilling prophecy if you stop. So part of it is you gotta like really do the work on you. The work on you. And I had to be like, okay, this don't got to be my reality. There's still time to fix it. There's still an opportunity to change it. I got to keep going. And someone said to me, keep fighting the good fight. Like you got to just keep going so that you can get to your next level. And even there's some through this time of unease, um, there's just been so much like ideas of new things that I need to be doing that I was not doing. And I've been talking to so many more people about ways and things of doing things and how business needs to look moving forward. So, some things that have been revealed, like, you know, we start a lot of these businesses from scratch. Why are we not buying businesses? So now this shift that okay, you need to buy some. The next iteration of my life is a business that's already making money and that I can buy. And I don't have to have, all the money to buy it, but I'm like I'm keeping that filler out there that I want to buy a business. So that's going to be in this next decade of my business, the next decade of my life. We got to buy. um Getting into other things. I'm people are coming to me around like stocks and things like that. I'm like, okay, we got to start investing more in the stock market. looking at other ways of multiplying money. You know how to make it, but this next part is about multiplication. But before I could bless you with multiplication, you needed to know how to make it and keep it and how to
Yeah.
steward it and do well with what you have so that when you have more, you know how to do well with that. So I wouldn't have got to that revelation if we didn't have all this tribulation,
That's
you know?
true. Yeah.
So sometimes that's part of it too. You don't, things are not revealed to you. Because the problem is when you're comfortable, and I've been comfortable. I got a lot of stuff that I can lean back on for uncomfortable. Like I would say I was a little aggravated or agitated, but I was pretty cool. I'm cool as a cucumber. When when you're cool as a cucumber, you don't take action or you don't respond to things fast enough because you're just okay with where you're at. But when you begin to feel agitated and aggravated and you feel the attacks and sometimes it's a wake-up call to do something else. It's the alarm clock
True.
that you needed to move. So then you have to move differently. You start being more creative, you start thinking in a different way, and new ideas begin to surface. But the first what is it, the first step to transformation is as aggravation or agitation. You can't be transformed and be the same. Something has to be ruffled, something has to be shaken and stirred before transformation can transpire. So that's part of it too. I'd be like, we being a new person, transformation is coming.
That's true. If you think, I was just thinking when you're talking about that, I'm like, the same thing like happened with God. Like
Mhm.
he could have been flooded the earth, but it got to the point where he was so agitated, like you said, where it's like, I need to, I don't think he was comfortable, but it's like, there's a time for a change. And when you think of when Jesus came, like he could have came to the earth like in flesh and been like, hey, before it gets crazy, I'm gonna teach y'all how to act right. But it got to that point. So I think even for us, it's like that's how it goes for our life too, and we can't shy away from that. What would you say to, let's say, the people that are listening to this that are where me and you were at maybe 10 years ago or so, right? Where they're working a job, they're Christian, they're working a job, a career that they have, they're not fulfilled in it. They're tired of going home, or they're tired of going to work, place that they don't find any joy or purpose in, coming home, basically eating dinner, going to sleep, doing that 5 days a week. They feel like God is calling them to do something greater, like how we felt, but they just haven't done anything yet. What would be your advice, or what would you have to tell that to say to that person?
So there's a book that I think I read 10 years ago around that time. I think it's Bruce Wilkinson, The Dream Giver's Gift, or something to that effect. It's The Dream Giver. And it's like the first line is rough ad libbing. It's like his name was nobody, but he wanted to be a somebody. And he was on a journey to become a somebody. And whatever the first line of the book, I wish I had it in front of me. And I was just like, okay, he wants to become somebody. And that was the journey of that book. It's a short read, but if you're feeling that agitation, like you are where you are, but you know you want to be somebody else or you're trying to be something else, read that book. I believe it's The Dream Giver by Bruce Wilkinson. I could have the name wrong, Dream Giver's Gift or something to that effect. There's a couple of books, but that's one I would say. Um, you got to make a plan. So when I knew I say the third year of the first day of the year when I was in Kazakhstan, my supervisor asked me if I was coming back to work the next day. And I was like, I don't know. But again, I live 5,000 miles away from my home. So I had to make a plan. So before you quit, you need to make a plan. So I knew that it was time to do something different because I was unfulfilled and it was what was uncommon became common and comfortable and I was aggravated. So start educating yourself. If you have a job, see if there's opportunities at your job for you to receive some additional education, some additional trainings. So you want to be well trained and well educated when you leave. You also want to make sure that you're putting money to the side. You got to have money to do what you're trying to do, period. So don't just jump off without no money. Put your money to the side, save up and invest in your dream. Stop, cut some of your expenses, decrease your debt. Like we got to be responsible when we're doing some of these things and then take a leap of
Yeah.
faith. Then you take your leap, but we want to leap responsibly. And then if for some people, we make a transition plan for them to leave their job. I'd be like, put the date on your calendar, get your marker out, write the date on your calendar when you're leaving and you need to prepare. And then for some people they're like, I'm out. Okay, we just leaving. That's going to cause additional challenges, because part of it is your family. If you have a family, you have responsibilities. They didn't ask for you to do this. They know you as who you are. They didn't get the same
Mm.
calling you received. So we want to make sure that they feel supported, because they don't understand this. I had a meeting with my family, with my siblings. I'm like, this is what I'm doing. I'm not doing no more Christmas gifts for these kids. I love y'all, but this got to go into my business. And they was little. They was like, okay. They didn't care. But it was just like, auntie just spending money coming home. Nope, business. Christmas is canceled. I told them. They was okay with that. I was like, but there's gonna be an ROI eventually. So
Yeah,
you gotta have a faith, and you gotta make a plan. Make a plan.
man. Yo, so where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
Okay, after the next couple of days, you can find me taking a nap and doing some self care. But on the internet, I will still be there. You can find me at Hey Dr. Shade or
Find
Dr.
me online.
Find me on the internet. Hey, Dr. Shade. Okay. And let me know if this has helped you, if this has blessed you. Um, Thank you for having me. Thank you for you being diligent and doing this again. And great things are coming. There's always seasons of rough patches, but after the season of a rough patch, there's growth. And the growth happens and occurs for the people who remain undeterred and steadfast. It's just, it's cyclical. It's just, historical. We see it in over and over and over again. Yeah, there's going to be seasons of storms, but then there's seasons right after that storm, right after that tornado passed us by. It was bright outside and it was like 8 o'clock at night. We were like, how is the sun out at 8 p.m. at
Yeah,
night? Like, it was so calm, quiet, and clear. So understand that there is going to be some calm right after the storm. So you got to be prepared. And some people are going to be propelled into the next season. So we got to be prepared now. So these challenges that you're having are building you up for the next set of challenges and issues that you may be experiencing, and you'll be better prepared for them. And when other people you encounter have these problems and challenges, how my mentor, shout out to Dr. Kelly, how he's able to help me, because guess what, he had to fill up events and things with thousands of people. He had the same challenge before, so he knew what to do. He's like, you gotta do this, you gotta do this, you gotta we that's how we build up experience from having challenges and tackling them. So I am excited, I am stressed, but I just decided that I'm going to respond to these things differently. And one of my clients says, we're going to say what we desire to see. Even if we are
right.
stressed, we going to say we happy, it's amazing, it's powerful. We're going to start speaking more life. We're going to speak more of what we want our reality to be, so that it will align with the things that we desire.
Spell your Instagram out. That way, people make
Hey,
sure they.
HEYDR Shade, SHADE. So, hey, DRSHADE. And I look forward to connecting with you guys there.
Yeah, I think one thing I'll add too, because we mentioned this, but I think sometimes people, it's like you hear a podcast. I always say this whenever people are like, "What do you want to say at the end?" I always say the same thing. Don't be the person that listens to like an hour of podcast, an hour of your life that you're not going to get back. You're nodding your head the whole time, kind of like people do in church. Like, oh my gosh, I needed this, and then when it's done, you go back to doing the same thing. Like you just wasted your life. You could have done something else with that hour. So you listen to this. She said, "Ask for help." She said her Instagram. If you need help, don't be the person that's like, yeah, but she's not going to reply. At least give it a chance. Let her decide if she's not going to reply, not you. Right?
I'm
So,
pretty good with replying. Somebody asked me that. It's like, I sent you a message. I was like, I responded. I
though,
made most of my social media.
to
I
be,
respond.
to be fair though, like we mentioned, like we're archiving right now. So
Mm,
let's assume that this video is, you said 10 years. 10 years from now, you have 10 million followers. That you don't have the same access as they do today. So that's what I mean. Don't be like, "Oh, I listened to this 10 years ago. She has more followers. She's not going to pay attention to me." Ask anyways. You never know. You never know. So
never
that's what I'm saying. Just
know.
take it. action and have faith. So I don't know who needs to hear that, but a lot of the times I'm like, don't waste an hour of your time nodding your head, because nodding your head does not change your life. Like, go take action on the stuff you're nodding your head to.
You never know. It's this has been amazing. Thank you so much for having me today. And keep going, keep asking, like just keep doing it. Sometimes, and don't and if people don't respond or act the way you feel like they're supposed to be acting, you don't know what storm they're going through too. Give people
True,
grace.
true.
That's another piece too. Like people need grace. This was
Yeah, that's
awesome.
something I be working on, because I be wanting to, like, how can I, like, Instagram should have a feature where I can report their account if they don't answer how I want them to. But you're right, you gotta show them some grace.
Give people some grace and protect your peace. Give your, you gotta have seasons of rest. Like, oh, pressing buttons. You gotta do what makes the most sense for you in that season.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, and we're gonna talk after this. But I appreciate y'all tuning in, and we're gonna see y'all on the next one.
Have a great day. Thank you